So in Apple's recent big announcement where they announced a lot of changes to Apple Podcasts, one of the big ones was the new Podcast Connect portal that allows you to manage and review how your show is performing in Apple Podcasts. So in this video, we're gonna break down some of the things that are new and some things to look for if you wanna fully engage with all of the new tools that are at your disposal.
Here we go!
So first things first, the rollout of the new Podcast Connect portal has not been without its hiccups. There have been people saying that, Apple's actually accidentally removed their show from Apple Podcasts. They've seen settings change and update without their awareness. So while we're expecting Apple to fully, fix all of these bugs, there's a chance that when you're watching this video, some of them might be there. So just be aware of that. If you see something funky, know that that's not gonna end up being what Apple Podcasts new Connect portal is gonna be. It's just like a little growing pains phase that they're in right now. But there are some cool things within the new Podcast Connect that I wanna let you know about that can give you more resources, more tools, and more data at your fingertips so you know exactly what to do with your podcast. And the biggest change that I think is gonna help a lot of podcasters is this new data point called engaged listeners. So on a podcast host side, when we are showing you your data, how many times your episode have been downloaded, where it's been downloaded, all those kind of things, we only see when somebody using an app like Apple Podcasts requests the file. But Apple knows how much of that episode they listen to and some of the other behavior around how they're interacting with your show. So with the new engaged listener statistic within Podcast Connect, Apple can tell you what percentage of your listeners, using their words, have played at least 20 minutes or 40% of an episode within a single session. So Apple's able to look at your listeners' actual behavior and say, okay, they are listening to at least 20 minutes of an episode once they hit play, or they're listening to at least 40% of that episode. And so what that does is it helps you understand not only how many people are downloading the episode, but how many people are listening to it all the way through within that subset. And the way this can be helpful for you is if you're thinking about monetizing in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you're looking at the new Apple Podcast subscription model to create some premium or some bonus content or things like that, and you wanna get a sense of how engaged your audience is on Apple Podcasts. This number can actually tell you that. It can tell you what percentage of people are really engaged with your content, are like your super fans, that would potentially be interested in opting into a subscription or a monthly support of some kind. The other really cool thing that Apple is now bringing into Podcast Connect is the ability to see the trajectory of how many people are listening to each episode compared to your recent episodes. This is something that YouTube does in their YouTube Creator Studio, if you're familiar with that dashboard and those graphs and those kind of things. But if we switch from the Overview tab over to Performance, it shows you your episode performance over time. And so we can see for the last 5 episodes of this podcast that the purple podcast has outperformed these other ones, the orange one, the green one, the blue one, and the red one, as they have been labeled, as far as how many listens, how many downloads they've gotten a certain amount of time after they've been released. And so the reason that this is helpful is it shows you the trajectory of your episodes, that if you have one episode that has a really big bump at the beginning and then other episodes that take some time to pick up momentum, you can actually see how those trends roll out over time to see which ones are getting picked up at certain times and be able to see how your episodes are performing compared to one another. Because if you're just looking at the total number of downloads, it can be difficult to parse out, well, is this episode better because it's older and people have more time to listen to it, or is it actually an episode people want more than the more recent one, which has fewer downloads? So this graph can actually tell you that information to help you get a sense of which episodes are actually performing really well for you. Now in the near future, we're gonna do a full walkthrough and tutorial of the new Podcast Connect platform so you know everything that's in here, where to find everything, how to use it. But we wanted to do this quick overview so you know kind of what to expect when you log in. If you've used Podcast Connect in the past, it's gonna look a lot cleaner. It's gonna be a lot more easy to navigate. Granted that you can get in and claim your podcast and do that without any issues. And so we do see this as a big upgrade compared to the last Podcast Connect. And we think some of these new features and data points can really be helpful as a podcaster. Now, if you're interested in a deep dive in all the announcements that Apple just made about Apple Podcasts and how it impacts you as a podcaster, then make sure you check out the video that is linked in the description below or the one that just popped out right here on the screen where Kevin, Albin, and myself walk through every single announcement that Apple recently talked about when we talk about how it impacts you as a podcaster. So make sure you go and watch that video next. Well, thanks for watching this one, and as always, keep podcasting.